Before the chains, Africa was home. Before betrayal, families lived in peace. Then strangers came, and brothers sold brothers. What followed was tears, blood, and the point of no return. The drums of Kambari village had always spoken. They called the people to feast. They warned of danger. They celebrated birth, harvest, and love. But on the morning the strangers came, the drums were silent. Not because there was peace, but because fear had stolen their sound. Ao was in the river with his little sister Saad, washing cassava roots. The sun had barely risen when birds exploded from the trees, screaming into the sky. Then came the shouting. Not in their language, not from their people. Different voices, harsh, sharp, angry. Ao felt it before he understood it. Danger. He grabbed Saada's hand. Saad, run. They didn't make it far. Men burst from the forest, some wearing European coats soaked in sweat, others dressed like neighboring tribesmen. African men, with ropes, with guns, with fire in their eyes. The betrayal hurt more than the fear. Ao recognized some of them. Men who had once traded salt with his father. Men who had eaten in their home. Men who had laughed at festivals. Now they hunted them like animals. A gun exploded. Smoke filled the air. People screamed. Women dropped babies and ran back for them. Old men fell to the ground, begging. Huts were set on fire. Anyone who resisted was cut down. Ao tried to shield Saad. A rope wrapped around his neck. He fell. Hands dragged him through dust. Saad screamed his name until a slap knocked her silent. Across the village, families were being torn apart. A mother clung to her son. An African trader ripped him from her arms and shoved her away. She's strong. She'll sell well, he said in broken Portuguese. The European man beside him nodded. Gold coins clinked. Human life was being priced. By sunset, Kambari village was gone. Burned. Broken. Silent. Over 200 captives were tied together by the neck. Among them were farmers, hunters, pregnant women, children no older than 6. The long march had begun. Ao whispered to Saad, tears sliding down his face. Stay close. Whatever happens, don't let go. Neither of them knew that the land they were leaving would never welcome them back. They walked for days. Then weeks. Bare feet split open on sharp stones. Blood marked the path behind them. Some collapsed. The answer was simple. A bullet, a whip, or abandonment. The forest swallowed their bodies. No burial, no prayers, just silence. At night they were herded into wooden pens like goats. Men on one side, women and children on the other. The crying never stopped. One night, Saad whispered, "Brother, where are they taking us?" Ao had no answer, but fear told him it was somewhere no one returned from. They passed villages that were quiet, too quiet, places where fires had burned recently, places where chains had already visited. Sometimes African traders joined them, bringing fresh captives. Sometimes European men rode horses, inspecting bodies. They squeezed arms, checked teeth, lifted women's chins. Strong, healthy, good price. Pregnant women were cursed. Old people were discarded. Children were taken easily, small, cheap, obedient. One afternoon, a woman broke free and ran. She ran toward the forest, screaming her husband's name. The gunshot echoed. Her body rolled into the dirt. No one was allowed to stop. The march continued over her blood. They reached the coast after many suns. And there it stood, the fort. Huge stone walls rising like a monster from the earth. Iron gates. Cannons pointed outward. The smell of salt, sweat, and death filled the air. This was where stories ended. This was where people vanished. The traders called it a station. The captives called it hell. Inside the fort were dungeons, dark rooms with no light. Hundreds packed together. Barely space to sit. The floor slick with waste and blood. Above them, European men drank wine, counted coins, signed papers. Ao held Saad as tightly as chains allowed. Whispers spread among captives. This is the place of no return. This is where souls are sold. The ocean roared outside like it was morning. One morning, the gates opened. Sunlight blinded them. They were dragged out in lines toward the shore. And there, floating on the water like giant wooden beasts, were the ships. Slave ships, with tall masts, black holes for windows, chains hanging from their sides. The smell of death drifted from them. People began to scream. Some fell to their knees. Some tried to run. The whips answered. Then it happened. The separation. Men were pulled one direction. Women another. Children ripped away. Ao felt hands tearing Saad from him. Saad, hold on. She screamed. Her fingers slipped. No. Brother. A whip struck Ao across the face. He fell. Saad was dragged toward the women. Her cries faded into the crowd. Nearby, a husband clung to his wife's waist. A trader beat him until his back broke. They were torn apart. Mothers fought for babies. Babies were thrown into other arms. Family names were swallowed by the wind. It was the death of identity. This place had a name whispered with fear. The point of no return. Once you passed it, Africa was gone forever. They were forced onto wooden boats that ferried them to the ships. Ao looked back at the land. The palm trees. The soil his father had farmed. The river where he had played. Tears blurred his vision. Chains pulled him forward. The ship swallowed him. Below deck was darkness. People stacked like cargo. Iron rings bolted to the floor. Chains locked around ankles. There was no space to sit upright. The air was thick. Hot. Hard to breathe. Cries echoed. Prayers rose. Some people went mad before the ship even moved. Above deck, sailors laughed. Strong load today, one said. We'll make a fortune in Brazil. The sails rose. The shore drifted away. Africa disappeared. And with it, freedom. The ship moved like a wounded beast, groaning with every wave that struck its sides. Below deck, darkness ruled like a curse. There was no sunrise there, no sunset, only endless night broken by the faint glow of lanterns and the screams of suffering souls. Ao no longer counted days. Time had lost meaning. All he knew was pain, hunger, thirst, and the sound of chains scraping against wood whenever someone shifted their broken body. The air was thick with death. People lay packed together so tightly that when one person turned, others were forced to move. Sweat poured endlessly from feverish bodies. The smell of human waste soaked into the wooden floor until breathing itself felt poisonous. Each morning, sailors came down with whips and pistols. They pointed at bodies. Some were still breathing. Some were not. The dead were dragged away like trash. Ao watched a young boy beside him stop breathing one night. The child had whispered for his mother until his voice faded into silence. By morning, his body was cold. 2 sailors grabbed his legs and pulled him up the stairs. Ao followed with his eyes as they threw the boy into the ocean. The splash was soft, like he had never existed. Soon sharks circled the ship, slicing the water with dark fins. They followed every day, knowing what would come. The ocean had become a graveyard. Some captives stopped eating the small handfuls of rotten food they were given. They curled into themselves and waited for death. Others screamed until their voices broke. Some sang songs of home, slow, sorrowful melodies in fading languages. Songs of rivers. Songs of mothers. Songs of freedom. Ao closed his eyes and saw Sada's face. Her laughter. The way she chased butterflies. The way she held his hand when thunder scared her. Live, he whispered to himself. For her. One night, the sea turned violent. Waves slammed against the ship like angry spirits. Water flooded the deck. The ship tilted so sharply people rolled against each other in panic. Chains clanked wildly. The wind howled like mourning ancestors. Above, sailors shouted in fear. Lightning split the sky. For a moment, Ao thought death had come to swallow them all. And many prayed for it. In the chaos, a strong man near the stairs managed to slip his chains loose. With desperate strength, he rushed upward. "Freedom!" he screamed. A gun exploded. His body flew backward, crashing down among them. Blood sprayed across Ao's chest. The man's eyes were still open. Hope died in that moment. The storm passed. The ship survived. But something inside the captives broke forever. Weeks later, a cry rose from the deck. Land! Those who could still move struggled to sit up. Light poured down the hatch. Ao crawled forward until he saw it. A strange shore. Tall trees. White sand. Foreign buildings. This was not Africa. This was the end of everything they knew. Brazil. They were dragged out like skeletons wrapped in skin. Many collapsed the moment their feet touched land. Some kissed the ground, thinking suffering was over. They were wrong. Markets waited. Men with money waited. Whips waited. They were washed with cold water. Their wounds rubbed with salt. Their bodies inspected like animals. Teeth checked. Muscles squeezed. Scars mocked. Families that had survived the voyage were separated again. Ao searched desperately. Sod. Sod. Only strangers stared back. Names were erased. New ones forced upon them. Iron brands burned into flesh, marking ownership. The smell of burning skin filled the air. Cries echoed like thunder. Ao was sold to a sugar plantation owner whose eyes held no mercy. From sunrise to night, he cut cane until his hands bled. Hunger followed him like a shadow. Anyone who slowed was whipped. Anyone who resisted disappeared. But at night, when exhaustion crushed their bodies, Ao whispered stories to others. Stories of Africa. Of drums that once spoke joy. Of rivers that once cooled tired feet. Of villages where children laughed freely. "Do not forget," he told them. "They stole our bodies, but our memories must live." Years passed. Hair turned gray. Scars covered his back like a map of suffering. But inside him burned something the chains could not kill. Hope. One evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, Ao stood in the fields and felt the wind brush his face. For a moment, it smelled like home. He closed his eyes. He imagined Sod running toward him. He imagined freedom. He imagined Africa still remembering them. Tears rolled down his face. "They took us," he whispered to the sky. "But they will never own our souls." And though the world had turned his life into bondage, his spirit remained free. They crossed the ocean in chains, but carried Africa in their hearts forever. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Thank you.